Good day, ladies and gents. Today we'll be going through, from start to finish, a Beastmen Minotaur Battle Standard Bearer. So I want to do a kind of an how-to, even though it's going to be heavily sped up, so you don't have to watch all 4 or 5 boring hours of it. Um, Doing a model from start to finish. I want to hit on some points as far as techniques that I use, especially the airbrushing, the colors, and whatnot. Um, and just kind of show you how I do it. So I'll try not to bore you, and it's going to be a little bit of a marathon here for 30 minutes, I suppose. But I'll try and keep every single piece of it filled with information that's useful and not just kind of white noise in the background. So all I've done right here is I'm just primering it after I filled it in. You're going to see here in a sec that when you hold the airbrush at a certain angle towards the back, you get this shadow effect. Now this is in the negative here, and you can see it in the negative, but that's exactly what we're going to do with the whole entire model of the airbrushing. It's going to set down the base and the main color for the entire model. So it's very, very important, and the way you do that is the angle that you hold the airbrush and the colors that you use. So here we go. We're going to base coat the entire thing with burnt umber from Vallejo Model Air, and making especially sure that we saturate the model from an angle, as you see I'm holding it upside down, from the bottom direction, because that is going to be our shadow right there. The burnt umber, the dark color is going to be our shadow. And we come in here with our starter highlights. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the airbrush at about a 45-degree angle from above, and I'm going to start basically doing the light source, or kind of faking the light source, if you will, from up above. And this is going to create a very, very nice effect, especially on this model with all these ridges and bumps in the muscles. Really kind of plays into this technique. I'm not holding the hairbrush too far away, and I'm definitely not going perpendicular to any surface. I'm being very cautious to make sure that I'm kind of glancing it, so to speak. If the I want it to be kind of a tangential, if you will, to how I spray it. So I've already done that with the first color, and then that was wood, and now I'm coming back in with a highlight, and it's going to be sand yellow, again Vallejo Model Air, and I'm just going to be doing just another kind of lighter coat, same exact technique, but just making it a little bit lighter. Now obviously that doesn't look very good, so what we're going to do is we're going to come in and we're going to blend all the colors together with a Minotaur Ghost Tint. This is brown. It's a very rich kind of chocolatey brown. What it's going to do is going to make that stark contrast between the highlights and the burnt umber underneath kind of meld together. It's really going to darken down our highlights quite a bit and give it a really nice shade. Now there aren't a lot of choices to choose from in Minotaur, but when you do a ghost tint, the undercoat really makes a difference on the final product. So you can do this with different colors if you want to make a darker one, more of a yellowish or red or whatever you can. That's just all dependent on the base coats you use. So I get done doing the ghost tint here, and then I'm going to put a varnish on it to protect it before we start moving on to the next stages. And you can already see here how the light hits it, and already starting to get that effect. And that effect's going to carry through on everything else. So we zoom forward in time here, and you can see that light that goes in and out is one of those headlamps you could buy at Bass Pro or Walmart or whatever that fits around your head. I found it to be a wonderful tool when you're doing kind of small details, especially at night when you don't have a lot of good natural light to see what you're doing. So messes with the camera, I apologize, but you'll see that the model has been varnished, and as the light comes in and out, the camera's going to have a hard time kind of picking up those colors. But all I'm doing here after the varnish is I'm going in with black and I'm painting all of the hair that's on the miniature. No real trick to this, and as the model gets moved around, you may start getting glimpses of the shadowing effect that airbrushing did for us. That's a good shot right there, as you can see exactly what it looks like. So anyway, you go through and you're going to paint all the hair black. Really nothing special about that. And I'm going to come in here with P3's pig iron or a very dark metallic color. You could use whatever you like. You can get a silver and mix with black. Metallics are really the only paints that you can add either white or black to make it lighter or darker. You can't do that with reds or blues or anything. Obviously, if you add white to red, you get pink. But it doesn't work that way for the metallics. So you can do that, but I find having a darker base that's already pre-mixed works very well. And pig iron from P3 is a wonderful color. Um, if you do use P3 paints, the metallic colors, you actually do need to cut with a little bit of water or thinner. Um, Unlike their other paints, you could usually use right out of the pot. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to use XV88 from Citadel. And the reason I chose that color because this thing is all brown. You're going to have to choose another brown for the leather that kind of stands out. So I chose XV88 and I'm going to go in. I'm just going to paint all the leather pieces. And we'll put a wash on that of Agrex Earthshade afterward. And you'll see it here that we've gone through and we've done all the leather. So the big question on this one is what do I paint the loincloth in? What color is that going to be? And all the can I've seen is always red or it's going to be brown. It's a little bit boring. I want something to pop. I mean, a red on there. You can see this model is already pretty red tinted. It's not exactly probably going to be the best color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try something a little different. I'm going to come in with coal black from P3 and just a singular highlight of frostbite. Now as I go through this, I'm going to kind of show you a trick because these colors are so far apart, getting them to blend seamlessly is going to be pretty difficult with the brush. I'm just base coating here in coal black, that's a darker color, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to do all the normal highlighting as you would normally do. You do a 2-to-1 mix and then a 1-to-1 mix and then a 1-to-2 mix between frostbite, the light color, and coal black, and you do your normal highlighting as you would normally do. But because the colors are so radically different, you're going to find yourself having a hard time getting them to blend. Do your best on this and go ahead and do everything that needs to be done in the normal ways that I'm sure you've done it, whether that's a wet blending technique or whatever. But don't try and blend it too perfectly. You're not going to be able to. You're going to have a little bit of stripes on there. Get as close as you can. So the trick that we're going to use to get these to blend, it's a wonderful trick, is use a wash. Now I know that says, well, of course you use a wash. Hear me out for a moment. A while ago I invested and I got the Vallejo wash series, which comes with your normal sepia wash and a black wash and a dark wash. It also comes with color washes. And I found these to be a wonderful tool in doing a more of a subtle transition or gradient when you're doing normal brush work and you don't have a chance to use the airbrush. Obviously here I'd have to tape everything off and putty everything off, try and get airbrush in there, hard angles to get to, so on and so forth, so it's definitely brush work. What you do is you get the wash that most closely resembles whatever you're painting, color you're basing in this case is going to be blue. Then you take your darkest color, add about a 3-to-1 mix wash to paint. You're going to mix them up. And then you're just going to do just a normal wash and kind of a heavy wash. And what that does, because there's so much paint in there and it is the base color, and the normal wash, it's going to do a fantastic job at blending the colors together. Here I'm putting in just a little bit of water just to make sure it's thinned down enough. And then I'm just going to go and do a normal wash. And you'll see in the final product how there is no gradation, is just really well done through there. And it's a great trick. It's not a big skill trick. Obviously, washes aren't high skill, but it does work very well and it's very effective. So now we have to turn our attentions towards the horns and the hooves here. I actually have another video on how to paint horns and hooves and nails. You can go ahead and watch that. But essentially, you paint stripes within stripes within stripes. You paint the nail a very dark brown on top of the black base coat and kind of outline it. And then you do a light bone color, and then you come back in with an off-white. And again, see the video that I have on how to paint those. Now, this right here, you see, is kind of a cartoony effect. Not really my style, but I want to go ahead and give it a shot to see how it blends in with the rest of my technique as far as airbrushing and wet blending and stuff like that. And I think it worked out okay. It's definitely kind of a, it makes a model pop because this model has a lot of shades of brown and they all kind of blend together. You have to find a way to make it pop. Um, I just thought it'd be kind of interesting here to show all the work that goes into actually taping and putting off something when you're going to go airbrush, after you've done your base coats. It's kind of a pain. Anyway, so when I do horns and I'm doing the fade, I always go from black that connects at the model and then it fades to white. You could do it either way. Either way has a different look and effect, but it's up to you, however you want to do it. And all I do is I go in here and I airbrush everything black, and then I airbrush everything dark brown, starting at the tip of the horn and kind of working my way back, and not going all the way to where the model starts, uh, so that there is a transition from black to dark brown, and then you just do another shade of brown, a little bit lighter brown, and then you come in with your bone color. In this case, I'm using Menoth white highlight. Because you have an airbrush, you can actually cheat a little here. You don't have to do so many different gradations of colors because it's an airbrush. You can actually get the white to blend into a darker color just by holding back on your PSI or holding back on how much paint's flowing out of the airbrush. Good trick to do, but it is very effective, and I think the final product, I actually like this better than the GW striation horns that they do on all their models. I think this looks a lot better. Again, it's just a different technique, more realistic looking rather um, than cartoony like or kind of in GW character, if you will. So here, because I did the loincloth in this kind of blue scheme, I'm going to do the standard itself. I want to take some time and actually go through this because this standard came out pretty good, and the technique that I use in here I think is actually something that deserves to be talked about. So there's nothing special here about the base coat, but what you're going to see I'm going to do is I'm going to start building up the highlights by adding in the same colors I did last time, which was the frostbite, and I'm going to basically do your standard ratio, base coat and then a 2-to-1 ratio of base coat and highlight, and then a 1-to-1, and then 1-to-2, and then all the way up to just straight frostbite. What I do for these is I hold the flag at the angle that I want to have the light coming from, and I basically graze the surface of the standard with these highlights over and over and over. Each time I'm doing a little bit less of a highlight, not spraying as I'm not saturating as much so that it's not just dark and then light right on top of it, so there is a transition there. Um, it's a very effective technique, and it really works well, especially on standards. Airbrush is just wonderful on standards, and they really give a great effect. And you can see already how the folds are in there. When you get done with this, you're not going to have to use a wash. You're not going to have to use any kind of pigments, anything like that. You're going to get done, and it's going to be a straight airbrush job, and it's going to look really, really nice. So again, here what I do is I'm just transitioning up the colors, and you do need to do transition of colors here a little more carefully, just like you did on the loincloth. Take your time on this, and just do a little at a time. And again, as you get towards the lighter and lighter highlights, do a little bit less paint every single time. And you can even tighten the angle from which you're spraying it, and that's going to help to give more of that transition. So it's brightest on, it's most bright in the direction from where the light's coming from, which is how it's supposed to be. And you do this a few times. Again, I'm concentrating on the top, so it's kind of transitioning from very bright on the top to dark as it comes down, and it works out real well. Here what I'm doing is I'm just doing the same thing I did on the horns of the Minotaur for the horns on the top of the battle standard. And there's these little metal pieces here on the end, and I'm just trying to get a good transition so that as the horn goes into that metal piece, it's starting to transition white, and it's going to give a very nice effect. Now we're going to go into a little bit of a wet blending thing here. So the first thing I do is I have this little talisman of stone hanging down. So I'm going to paint that with a Great Coat Gray from P3. And then I'm going to go through and I'm going to dry brush it with a lighter gray and a white. And then I'm going to come in after that, and basically there's a like a rune on it. I'm going to fill in that rune with a nice dark blue. I didn't want to have it a glowing effect because there's kind of a lot of airbrushing transition type things. I didn't want to do a light source, so I just painted in just straight blue. Now there's also 2 teeth that are hanging down next to this thing. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the teeth in the same way that I did the teeth for the Minotaur, and that is you start with a kind of a mid-range brown. Doesn't need to be real dark. I know let's say you need to start with a real dark whenever you're doing teeth, and you never really get that light. And I don't really subscribe to that technique. I actually start my teeth and bones like this out relatively light. We're talking kind of if you're talking from the Games Workshop line, I would probably say something like a Steel Legion drab, about that dark, not too much darker than that. And I paint the entire piece of bone, in this case teeth, that color, and then I come in with the bone color. I believe Games Workshop's bone color is now called Ushadabi. I don't know how to pronounce that. Bone. It's a bone color. It's actually quite brown. And then I come in after that with another highlight, Menoth white highlight, or some sort of off-white. No real tricks here, just that. And I know it's a little bit distance, probably hard to see that little intricate detail, but if you want to see exactly how to do this up close, let me know. Post a comment below, and I will go ahead and do a tutorial on that. So again, I'm just painting the teeth here, and I'm painting the skull, and then I'm just going to do my 3 phases of highlights as I just described on the skull, and we'll give it a nice dark wash. And then we got to finish up the rest of the piece here. Alright, so finishing out this project, I wanted to show this a little bit of wet blending here. After I've gone through and I've done all the bone, and I painted the shield of the little centerpiece pig iron again with no highlights. I'm going to come through again with my base coal black. I'm going to paint this little star, base it all in coal black, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint the tips in the highlight color, and again that's frostbite, a very light blue. Every single one of those 8 tips in the highlight color, as you can see. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of wet blending. Now I think I've already done a video on my mixing compound that I use. It has drying retardant in it. So all I do here is you see me working with 2 brushes as I put some of the dark color right on the other side of a dab of the light color, and then I pull the light color up into the dark. And you don't want to do it the other way because you're going to run out of space. And lights tend to do a much better job going into dark, not the other way around. So the final product worked out pretty good. And here on the standard has to be finished. So we're going to have to do all the fur. We're going to have to do the metal pieces and then assemble everything. So all I'm doing is I'm filling everything with a very dark brown. This is a mixture of black and brown together. And then I'm going to go through, I'm going to do, this is a dry brush, but it's almost like an overbrushing. I'm using a lot of P3 paints here to do it, and I'm just kind of raking a pretty wet dry brush over the fur. The fur is raised up enough, it has enough curvature to it that you don't really have to worry about dry brushing a whole, in your normal way, you can kind of just pull it across. We'll be able to go back later with an oil wash and redefine some of that stuff in there. I like doing this technique a little better. I'm not a big fan of dry brushing all the time. Some people say, dry brushing is for amateurs, and that's not true. Don't listen to any of that kind of stuff. But what it does do is that dry brushing, because the paint's so dry, you get this chalky effect sometimes, and I just don't like that chalky effect at all. So um, do yourself a favor and learn different ways around dry brushing. Dry brushing is good to do at the very beginning stages of a model when you're going to have other layer of paints on top of it, and you can do highlights on top of that and do washes on top of it, or shades or glazes or whatever you want, and it's going to serve to kind of hide that chalkiness. But if you don't, well, then you're going to kind of have this kind of chalky look, and it's going to be kind of here and there. It's not going to be very homogeneous as it blends in, and so, and that's just the way dry brushing is. I haven't found a way to really get in there and dry brush something so that it's real smooth all the way around. I don't have any lines or any portions that kind of go out of context, so to speak. That's just part of it. Obviously, you just see me here just working on the standard. Got to paint in all the claws, the bones. We'll do a wash on it and get it all finished up. All right, let's go ahead and finish this thing up. If you're still with me after all this time, I appreciate it. I think with the camera in here, it took me probably about 5 hours or so to actually get this one done. But again, I'm kind of going slow, showing things, and I want to be detailed about this. Here I am actually using a dry brushing technique with a P3 paint, so it's very wet paint, to try and do a gradation on the horns there that are part of the battle standard. And then I'll go back in with that color and highlight it. There I am right there to try and get a good transition between the very, very dark brown and the lighter brown. So we're basically done here. I'm gonna go ahead and glue the standard on to the miniature. You see I've kind of switched my little studio or my camera layout here. Not sure if I really like it yet or not. So forgive me for switching around here. Anyway, I'm going to go in with some of this GW texture. Now, if you can ever get your hands on this GW texture, go ahead and walk on and don't buy it because it's not very good and you can make it from scratch. I got it as part of a package that I bought off of eBay with like 15 paints that came with it, so I need to use and get rid of it. So I'm just going to do some basing here, and I'm actually trying to do quite a lot of stuff on the base. It's a big base, so let's see if we can do quite a few things on it. So I got some sand in there on top of the texture paint. I'm sorry, it's kind of hard to see. There's a little bit of glare on there. I don't have a professional light setting. So anywhere that the texture paint didn't go, I'm going to put some glue down, and then I'm going to come in with some ballast here. Actually, this is Army Painter's ballast. It's great stuff. It's a little soft. You got to be careful when you paint that because the particles almost soak up the paint and kind of become a little engorged, so to speak. So just be aware of that. I'm going to put some rocks on here, and I'm going to actually hit it up with a varnish to keep everything pinned down so when I do things they don't roll off. Now I have those little cork rocks. I'm going to actually paint them black. I found as I was going in to highlight one of them, it wasn't properly sealed down and actually rolled off. So I just let it stay off, and I'm going to replace it with a tuft of grass. My intention here is to cover all the brown where the texture was with static grass and have the brown underneath so you can actually see through the grass, see the brown underneath. And put some bigger tufts in there to kind of give it a little more of a visual appeal. And here I am just kind of doing a quick dry brush with some gray, and somewhere along here that little one on top is going to get ticked off with me and peel off. So And I go in here and there it goes off, and I'm putting glue down on where the texture was, the textured paint, and then I'm just going to go in with a green static grass, kind of like a field type of thing. The tufts first. So one tuft goes there. I'm going to put the static grass on. And usually when I do this, I'm going to put all the grass on, and I'm actually going to kind of look back after I'm done and see, okay, what did I miss here? And the color there's awful saturated. Again, I apologize. Down near the bottom there, there's actually a little bit of something I miss. I end up putting a tuft there. A little trick for when you put ballast down, get some paint, mix with water, get it pretty wet, and you can paint it over your ballast, and when the glue dries, it will kind of act as a cement and hold that ballast in place so it doesn't chip off and go everywhere. You should probably do that before you put static grass on, but if you're careful, you'll be all right. Put another tuft on to hide the mistake, and then after that, it's time to put the miniature on. When you put the miniature on, when you've already built the base like this, a good idea to do is actually put a little bit of tack in on the bottom of the feet so that there's something that kind of conforms to the ground. That will help. Before I actually put it down here, I went out and I put a gloss varnish on this thing, and here I am making an oil wash. So I want to get a nice wash into the recesses. Oil wash is wonderful stuff. You got to go out and you got to try it. It doesn't stain things colors like the other washes do. It just goes into the recesses. So you can paint it over stuff without you really fearing that you're going to have all these splotches and watermarks all over the place. Or recoloring things. I'm actually going to go through and I'll actually wash the fur that's up on the battle standard. And it's not going to change the color of any of the overbrushing that I did. It's just going to go into the recesses and define it a little bit better. So I'm pretty heavy on the wash here, and again, you thin it down real good with mineral spirits, and it runs the capillary action, makes it run into all those little cracks. I just want to redefine the low points just a little bit more, and I know I've kind of painted. Oil paint doesn't have to be really strong. This is thinned down quite a bit, so it's a little more subtle, so you're not going to get those really hard black lines. And just the way that it works, it also does kind of a smooth transition, a gradient from where you start and where you stop, depending on how much of the mineral spirits or the thinner you put in. And after that, I go ahead and put a varnish on it. Before we put a varnish on it, you want to go in, get yourself a Q-tip, dip it in some mineral spirits, and then wipe off whatever excess you don't need from the oil wash. And after that happens, go ahead and you're going to stick a varnish on it. I usually go with a satin varnish. It's my favorite. And then when you're done, here she is. Didn't turn out too bad. And again, I am a hack. So if you like this, guys, I'm sorry it was so long. Let me know. Let me know what else I could do, what tutorials I could do to help out. I hope you guys enjoy. Take care.